All right, and for those of you online, we're just waiting for more commissioners to show up in order to have quorum to start the meeting.
Fine. How's everybody doing?
Well, thank you.
Good, thanks. How are you?
Not bad. One day at a time.
Yes.
Well, we can do. Hi, Helen.
Hi, all.
We're just waiting for more commissioners to show up in person so we can have an official quorum.
Phil, there's some background noise. You might want to make sure folks are muting their mics.
Okay. Are you able to mute people, or do we have to ask them to mute? Thanks. We got. Yep.
Yeah, sounds like somebody brought a baby to the meeting.
I could join from here as well. So
You're trying to screen share.
I will. I'm trying to join, but I was getting not syncing properly.
Okay. If you're not able to screen share at a minimum, I forwarded it to responses to commissioners, and I can just read it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
That probably. Well, we'll see how.
All right.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
For the transcripts for this meeting, is it possible to get a copy of those for those that attended?
Those will be posted publicly. We have to vote on the minutes first. So at some point, those will be posted publicly to the commission website.
There's not a transcription.
Yeah, it's not a
It's not
transcript.
a transcript. It's notes taken during. Yeah, there's a video of the meeting, and then there's notes from the meeting.
But it's archived, so I could refer back to it if I needed to.
Yes.
Yeah, you could look at the notes that were taken, and you could also rewatch the video of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And Stephen appearing virtually. Hi, Stephen. We're just waiting on a quorum for physically present commissioners.
If you don't end up having a quorum, you can go ahead with your meeting, just can't vote.
Right. Everyone's here.
Everyone's here.
Jason.
It's quick. Rolling. We're in here.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Make it a quorum.
Move again. Watch my.
All right, so with Roland here, that makes it a quorum, so we can officially call the meeting to order. So I'll start off with some things from the chair update in relation to our last special meeting around the letter that we composed to the DOJ. So I've been talking with our county board liaison, Matt DeFronti. He sent me a message to the commission that he emailed me today. I forwarded it to everyone who want to take a look when they get a chance. And I'll just read it loud now, so for those who don't have access to it. says, thank you for your service on the Human Rights Commission. I write to update you in light of your last meeting.
Unmute.
There you go. I write to update you in light of your last meeting and a draft of a letter that has come to my attention. Under state code and the county ordinance, the HRC must obtain approval from the county board before seeking assistance with the prevention or relief from discriminatory practices from external enforcement authorities. See Virginia Code 15-2A2, Arlington Code 3161I. The board has not yet had an opportunity to consider this matter. Respectfully, under the above provisions, any decision to send a letter or request to DOJ must wait until the county board has such an opportunity. As liaison to the commission, I plan to attend the March 14th meeting to engage with you, and I'm happy to talk with you then about this. And just some additional information from when I spoke with Matt. So he was essentially saying that they got this opinion from the county board attorney that the commission doesn't have independent authority to send a letter to DOJ. If in order for the letter to go out officially, it would have to be sent. We would have to send it to the Human Rights Office for them to then, put the seal on and make it official and send it out. But if we were to do that, the office would be prohibited by the county board from sending that out. So it seems the situation now is we're unable to send the letter. We don't have authority to send a letter according to the county board. What Matt suggested as a potential alternative was turning the letter into a letter to the county board to ask the county board to send the request to DOJ. But I just want to open up for discussion on in light of this information and what everybody thinks about that.
I disagree with the email that Matt sent today, and I looked at, he cited the Code of Virginia 15.2A2. That's not even the complete section. And I feel that not providing the.
But it's 31.6. The second citation is to the code, is to the Human Rights Code.
Right, I'm talking, he
Yeah,
stated
the
the
first-
Virginia, the Code of Virginia.
Yeah, the first part he cites is to the Code of Virginia. I think that's a mistake. I texted him to see if he could provide like an update on what the actual citation is, because 15.2A2 isn't.
It's general.
There's no, it has to be like 15.2-100, 101, something along those lines. So that I think is a mistake. It's not a real.
It's not a complete,
Right.
which in my opinion, it's a delay tactic because it's not a complete code. So I did have the opportunity to research the Human Rights Code and the Code of Virginia, and I found two specific codes. And I'll start with the Code of Virginia that's partially cited by County Board Member Matt DeFerranti. And in looking at the Code of Virginia, I was able to find 15.2-853 human rights and 15.2-725 Commission on Human Rights subpoena request. And since
Wanda, what are those two sections again?
15.2-853 and 15.2-725.
Thank you.
Looking at 15.2-725 and looking at the email that Mr. DeFerranti sent, he references 15.2A2. So that's what I'm referring to at 15.2-275A, number 2, which says to serve as an agency for receiving, investigating, and assisting in the resolution of complaints from citizens of the county regarding discriminatory practices, and with the board's approval to seek through appropriate enforcement authorities prevention of or relief from such practices. The Human Rights Commission is not seeking enforcement. The Human Rights Commission in their letter, they're not seeking prevention. The only thing that the Human Rights Commission is asking for is an investigation. So this code if this is the code that Mr. DeFerranti is referring to, is not applicable because we're not seeking enforcement and we're not seeking prevention. We're seeking an independent investigation. That's all that we're asking. And in relations to the Arlington County Code 31-6 letter I, it states the same thing, that to seek with the approval of the county board through appropriate enforcement authorities, prevention or relief from violations of this chapter. The Human Rights Commission is not seeking enforcement or prevention or relief. We're simply asking for an independent investigation. So neither one of these last minute codes that Mr. DeFerranti emailed applies. And as we voted 2 weeks ago at our last meeting, we reviewed the code and found that we had authority to submit a letter simply asking for investigation. So that vote was unanimous. This partial code that Mr. DeFerranti provides along with the county code are not applicable. We gave Mr. DeFerranti the courtesy of waiting until today so that he could be heard, even though we unanimously voted and approved last meeting, and he's not even here today. My understanding, he's attending another meeting and that he chose to attend the other meeting as opposed to attending this. And we waited specifically for Mr. DeFerranti so that he can be here to provide some remarks, and he's not here.
Anything, go ahead.
So I'm not sure what I think of his note to us as well, but one, I'm not sure you're entirely reading that provision correctly, although I don't know what I think of it. Because the way that the comments are included, it's not enforcement, prevention, or relief. It's through enforcement authorities. Maybe that's through enforcement bodies, comma, either, by addition, prevention or relief. So I don't know exactly what that means, but it's not enforcement, prevention, or relief. I think we are probably, frankly, seeking relief. The question is, though, does our power to inform the public and to use our voices as a bully pulpit get authority somewhere else in the statute to do something like this? I think it probably does. But frankly, I'm not sure that I want to directly challenge them on this, but I don't really know how to proceed.
Any other thoughts, including from commissioners who are appearing virtually?
I think I agree with Stefan. It's real ambiguous where we are now, and Matt didn't show up, Sheriff didn't show up, and what are we to do?
Doesn't anyone question why the county board member who asked for this delay is not here, and that there's so much resistance from the county board and the county board member from asking for an independent investigation? I think you have, is there any more information you want to share in terms of what the county board?
Not the county board, but before we did get responses from the sheriff for the, oh yeah, there is a little bit more on that, but Stephen, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on the interpretation of the statute. I think Wanda's reading of it is fair. Whether or not we want to go forward anyway and sort of shrug our shoulders and say, this is how we view it. I mean, I'm not sure what the county board is going to do other than send their own letter to DOJ and say, we don't think that the Human Rights Commission has the authority to make the request, but the request was already made. So I don't know that that's really what should stop us. If we want to try to collaborate more with the county board and make sure that they're on board with this, which I can't imagine they're going to be on board with anybody requesting an investigation of the jail, but I don't know that we have to necessarily agree with what Matt's saying. That's not how I read the section.
And the other thing I was going to add, which even you kind of already alluded to, Matt did say that, just from a practical standpoint, interpretations aside, as I was mentioning earlier, for the letter to be like official or have like the official seal and things like that of the county on it, it would have to go to the Human Rights Office to then send it out. It seems we're in a position where like that wouldn't be done. Matt said the board could send it out, technically as individual citizens who were on the board. But then if that were to occur, then the chair of the county board would send a letter to DOJ essentially saying that this is not an official letter. The board does not have the authority or capacity to send this letter out. So I think for me, the main issue with interpretation aside is I'm not sure if there's a mechanism through which we can officially send the letter out through the Office of Human Rights with like the actual marker that this is an official letter from the county.
Where's that written? I mean, we know that Matt said that we can't use the letter. Where's that stated?
Because when we have to, because we're a creation of the
County board?
not the county board, because we're like an advisory entity to the county board.
Mm-hmm.
And our communications are sent through the Human Rights Office. The office answers to the county board. Like technically you could just put a seal on the letter, but
I'm not sure, I don't know if it matters.
Mhm.
The office actually answers to the county manager.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We answer to the county board.
We asked with
But we're
in
staff,
office.
so I don't know what that actually means.
Yeah. Actually, that's right. Yeah, because there would be like technically the executive speaking of the county level agency.
It's Gurjit on, Anna, so
She's out.
So are you saying that the entity that created our commission is the one that governs how we need to act in any given circumstance?
Well, now, from what Matt explained to me, I'm not sure if that's completely accurate since the office would answer to the county manager, not to the county board. So the authority of the office to send it out would then fall under the manager as opposed to the county board.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know the specifics of how that would work out. We could send it to the Arlington Human Rights Office and see if.
Few more questions to Luanda's point about, I'd like to ask the questions, but it also does seem to be training on this.
Yeah.
And, as we all know, if somebody doesn't want to do something, one of the tools in the toolbox is to ask them to go through undue hoops, hoping that they're just going to either give up or it's going to, create a world of its own.
Mhm.
When it got much further, did Matt give a reason for why he isn't going to be here tonight, and or why he didn't give a response earlier than today? Because I think we made it pretty clear that we were holding off on this because it wasn't that much longer before he would be here, and we felt that that was a reasonable amount of time to do that. But then there's another delay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Matt's reason for not attending, he said, was he had to attend another advisory meeting that he hadn't attended in a couple of months.
Uh-huh.
As for, so he'd spoken to me earlier in the week in response to, in relation to the letter. But the reason why I didn't get the text today that I shared with the commission is that he said he needed to speak with the attorney with the county
Okay.
attorney
Okay,
further.
so you wanted to wait till you got further clarification before, yeah, okay.
That's what he told me, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Trying to think.
but, yeah, and do we know why the sheriff isn't here tonight?
Didn't give a reason that I'm aware of, yeah. So we could,
Can I, just one more question?
yeah,
Is it unusual for somebody that has been scheduled to appear for 2 meetings in a row now to not appear and not give up?
I don't think we have subpoena powers. I mean, he doesn't want to come in.
No, I'm not going there. I'm just asking a question.
you're just saying is this something that's happened before where someone's scheduled and is canceled?
Well, I mean,
I don't know, I haven't,
I'm throwing the question out there. I'm not even gonna go to, I understand what you're saying. That really wasn't, I'm just trying to answer this question right here for now.
Is it pertain to the sheriff, that sheriff refusal to attend?
Yeah, I mean, I think, in
Sure.
any instance,
First-
one would
first-
think if you're scheduled for 2 meetings in a row and then you don't show up for one, then you don't show up for another, there'd be some reason given. I mean, you'd have to have an awful, just from a perspective of professional courtesy, not even going into the legal aspect of it, which I wasn't even addressing, but maybe an issue, I don't know. But and especially given the nature of what it is that's to be discussed. I throw the question out there.
and Stephen, you were gonna say something?
I think we should just sort of stay on the agenda and let's deal with the first issue first. And if we want to get to the second issue about why the sheriff isn't there later, that's certainly fine. But I'd like to kind of get resolution what we're going to do with the first issue before we move to the next one.
Agreed,
Right,
yeah.
right.
So, so it seems like we could send the letter to the Human Rights Commission or to the Human Rights Office. I'm not sure then what would happen after that.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Where does it say we have to send it to the Human Rights Office as opposed directly to DOJ?
Nowhere that I'm aware of. I think that's just has been the usual process, unless anyone's aware of why that is the usual process.
Well, sometimes when I was chair, sometimes I didn't, sometimes
I see.
I did. And it depends on the circumstances, and it depends, for me, it depends on the nature of the letter itself. If you're signing something yourself as chair, if you wanted to go out on the letterhead, then if you don't have the letterhead, then I think you have to get the letterhead pretty much from the Office of Human Rights.
Right.
If you don't have it yourself. I have sent things in the past and not use the letterhead. So and I understand that if you want to do that, then you have to go through the office. But then also, I think you have to ask the question: is the nature in which you're going to sign? Are you going to sign it as chair of the commission?
In what capacity?
Yeah, and then if you're signing it as chair of the commission, then you make the decision whether you want to do it through letterhead or whether you want to do it. And I think it'd be good to hear from Helen also,
Right,
whether she did it officially through letterhead or whether she just sent it pretty much on her own. I have used both pretty much in the past, just depending on the nature of this.
And before I recognize Helen, so the times that you in the past sent it just yourself, what letter just yourself, do you remember what types of were any of them like letters to like federal entities or other types of governmental entities?
No, they usually have been letters to the county board members themselves.
I see.
And maybe one or two instances letters which have pretty much gone out. I think the practice, though, from my experience with other commissions that I served on, is that the correspondence, which pretty much uses the letterhead, kind of goes through the office that is pertained to, because they have the official letterhead.
Right.
But usually in those instances, they don't the staff that does it doesn't change the letter. It just goes through that office.
I see.
But then at the same time, you kind of don't expect that office to send out something through that office, knowing that they're going to get some sort of flack from above.
Right.
Because that puts that employee pretty much in jeopardy. So it depends. Helen, how did you do it?
Yeah, I think consistently, Roland, with what you're sharing. So in my term as chair, I think the only instances where we sent official correspondence not to the county board was when we sent an advisory communication to HR as a follow-up to our meeting last September with some advisory steps, as you all will recall. But that was an internal matter, right? And that would have gone out on letterhead. I would have signed it in my capacity as chair. And then we would have sent out correspondence when we had appeals, right? Which would have revealed the disposition of whatever the appeal was. I think in all of our instances, it would have been sustaining the findings of the office. And that would have been the only instance where we would be sending a letter outside of Arlington channels. That would be on our letterhead. I would sign it as chair, but Anna, you and Gurjeet would distribute it from your office. Now, the bigger point I would want to just sort of weigh in here, and admittedly, I wasn't able to attend in January either meeting, so I don't have the facts on what has come to light here, other than what I have read in the letter, which is really well done, right? We have a concern. We have a high number of deaths within the facility. We're asking for an investigation for this to be looked at. We think that is within the purview of our ordinance, of our mandate. That's great. Where I think I part ways with some of the opinions I've heard so far is on not going through the ordinary channel that we have already gone through. Because what I would hate to have happen is for the message to be diluted because we're creating a procedural jurisdictional sideshow around whether or not we had the appropriate authority to do it. And so I guess my question back to folks on this call is, why wouldn't we send the sum and substance of that letter in a very strident tone to the board, encouraging that the board itself takes action imminently, given what all of you have heard, and then make your decision on what to do next, depending on what that answer is. Now, here's a person who's been in the trenches with all of you for 3 years trying to work on the ordinance. I understand delay, and I understand a slow bureaucratic process, and that's not throwing blame at anybody. It just is the nature of the beast. So I understand that could be slow, and we have an imprimatur here to move quickly, but I don't see the value in disregarding the procedural issue that the board member has put in front of us. And I'm really concerned that is going to completely overshadow what the underlying message is. So I'd encourage you guys to sort of think through what's our goal here and how are we best suited to get to that place. I think alignment with the board and pushing them to do what we need them to do within the statutory purview, not a fair reading of it, but the typical reading of it, right, is sort of the way to go. That's just my 2 cents.
Can I just add that the board has already clearly stated that whatever we decide to do, if we decided to send the letter, they're going to disagree. They don't approve. They've already made that determination. So whatever letter we send to the county board asking them to review, to consider, they've already stated they are not in agreement, they're not going to support it, and that they're going to write their own letter in opposition.
Wanda, and I'm sorry, I've sort of missed these 2 meetings. How do we know that that's the board's position? Have they conveyed that to us in some way?
So what Matt told me was that if the commission sends the letter either out itself or through the Human Rights Office, that the chair is communicated to him, the chair of the board of the county board has,
Libby
Garvey has communicated to him that she would then have to that she would then send a letter to DOJ, essentially saying that the letter is not an official letter and that the commission did not have the authority to send the letter out. So basically disregarding.
But that's procedural, Bill, no? that point would be proceed, if, what
Right,
I'm
it
hearing is if
wouldn't
we
be-
send it
right.
out without their authority, they would say that wasn't authorized.
Right.
Wanda's point, as I'm hearing, was substantive, right? That irrespective of what we ask the board to do, Wanda, are you saying that they're not going to support the substance of the request? Do we know that piece of the question?
Yes.
Well, no, what was communicated to me was that she would send a letter out disagreeing with the authority of us to send it out. Unless anybody else has had communication otherwise, I don't.
Mr. DeFerranti clearly stated in a conversation that we had in a separate meeting with NAACP, myself and President Heminger had a separate conversation with Matt DeFerranti, not human rights related. And I just simply asked him, was he coming to attend today, because we had not heard anything from him. And then that's when he proceeded to say that he didn't agree. He spoke with the county attorney that we don't have the authority and that he's in agreement with that and he wouldn't support.
Yeah, but that's still on process though. I mean,
Yeah.
he may think that it's, as a county, we don't want an investigation of the jail. He may believe that, but what he told you was this commission doesn't have the power to do it. If we go forward with the power, with the letter that the county chair will write to the DOJ saying we don't have the right to do it. They may or may not disagree with our substance, but he didn't tell you that he disagreed with our substance. He said, we don't have the authority to do this letter.
But we do.
Okay, but that's Helen is saying that that's a process response as opposed to the substance of whether the county is going to want a investigation of jail. They may or may not want that. I think they probably wouldn't want it, but no one has told us that.
Then Matt should have been here today. He chose to attend another commission than attend this one today, where he knew we were going to discuss this exact topic.
So how about if we do this? You know, sort of piggybacking on Stefan's point that we don't know whether or not Matt's objection is substantive, procedural. Why don't we just, I guess we could do two things. We could shoot Matt an email saying, you know, asking that same question. Or we could just write our letter, send it to the board and saying, this is what we're going to send. Are you on board with the substance of what we are asking for here? Or are you, you know, I guess they said that they weren't.
These are delay tactics.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Just keep kicking the can down the road. This is the second meeting. The sheriff has not attended.
I
That's not here
understand.
today.
I'm trying to, but I understand. I empathize. I'm just trying to move it along and sort of, you know, that may or may not be what they're trying to do, but we still need to move. Which is, we need to get approval on the substance, right? Is that what I'm hearing? We need to get approval on the substance before it's considered by DOJ. And that's the only way that we can actually send that letter with our letterhead.
No, we don't need approval on the substance. That was just a question that was raised, whether anyone from the county board has given a position on the substance.
So we can't send it on our own without approval. We can send it, but they're then going to send a letter to DOJ telling them to disregard that letter.
Right.
So
If we send a letter, they're going to send.
Okay, so that's just an exercise in futility. Let's forget that one.
Not necessarily if the recommendation you're making, Fatima, is that we send our letter, the content of which would be directed to the county board, and paper it over very specifically and very demonstrably. And the request to the county board is that they, within their purview of authority, in turn, support a request that the DOJ open up an investigation into this matter. So our paper is an ask for the county board to do what we think is right. That's what elicits their substantive response. And to Wanda's point, you're right. There is some delay here, but that's what avoids ambiguity on our record in making that ask very clearly.
and Matt hasn't seen he hasn't seen the letter.
He's seen the letter.
With the letter with the edits.
He has seen the letter with the edits.
Because
yes.
not that I agree with that. I actually agree pretty much with Wanda, but I can see how a board, looking at the history of the board and pretty much this whole thing regarding the sheriff's office and the frustration that the NAACP and other entities have gotten over the years and trying to get into what the depths and everything. I can see the particular board having a problem with the Arlington Human Rights Commission requesting an investigation. So I think that language, I can understand them saying we don't agree. And we don't like that. And because they don't like that, I can understand then the chair, if we send it out, coming back and saying, well, we as Arlington County we didn't have the authority to do that because we don't want to request that. Now, whether one looks at it as, as political, which is probably what it is, or not, I can still pretty much understand them doing it. So the question is, they're not necessarily going to support us on this. But the question is, do we want to do this? And yes, if we want to do it, exactly what it is we want to do. Do we want to request that DOJ specifically do the investigation? Do we want to support what has already been filed by the NAACP with the Department of Justice? Because there's something that's been sitting there ever since 2022. Am I correct? 2022. It's been there. The letter. Yeah, I think it was 2022. Yeah, it was 2022. I think it was March of 2022. Yeah, when they send the letter there. So the question is, are we supporting what's there already, or are we actually asking them to do an investigation?
I think the other question just
Does it have to be an either or? I mean, can it be both? Can we ask them to look at what the NAACP sent as the basis, or as one more reason to look at the letter, any letter that we might send, as making it more relevant given what has happened in the past?
And Stephen, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, thanks. So I think two things are worth noting. One, what's the consequence of having an ambiguity in our process? I'm not sure there is any, unless there's some concern that DOJ cannot investigate or follow through with our letter because it didn't come from the proper source. I'm not so sure there's any real negative consequence between not going through the right process. And I can't imagine any scenario when the county board is going to support this on a substantive matter when we can't even get them to make the amendments to the ordinance. So
Well said.
If the goal is just to sort of push this along and try to nudge DOJ, I think we just send it.
Yeah, what do we have to lose, I think is what you're saying. I would agree.
I
mean, the worst thing they can do is say no. And if they say no, then we can kick it back to the county board and say, we'd like to get your approval on it. And then that puts them in the position. It sort of paints them into a corner, if you will, and they have to make a decision. And then, they're trying to not make a decision right.
And Stefan.
Well, what's the worst that could happen? I don't know that this is likely. They could retaliate against us and the work that we do. They could defund the Human Rights Office. They could, I don't know, could they get rid of us as members of the, I don't know that matters. They also could make, I am concerned that it dilutes our letter if we send it and they say, we have a process at Arlington and these are, 9 citizens. So, well, that's on the substance, but they could retaliate against us. I don't know.
Well, let's look at that for a moment. I think you bring up a good point. So let's say they do retaliate. You mentioned one form that could take defunding us. How much money do we get anyway? And does it really make a difference in our operations? I mean,
I'm not saying defund the commission. I don't know that we get much at all.
In the office.
The office that they really support and the human rights function in Arlington.
yeah,
I don't know.
so basically the authorization for us to exist at all essentially is what where you're taking. It's not necessarily the funding. I see where you're going, what you mean.
That's true, although I think that would be an extremely bad look for the county public to react to.
Yeah.
I'm saying theoretically.
Yeah, but that's true.
I mean, as opposed to if there's, what's the harm of us sending it through your computer? Well, in theory, there are some.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And I see a member of the public, John's hand raised.
Well, yeah, Stephen, you touched on some good points. I'm a little confused. What I'm hearing is that for this letter to DOJ to open up this investigation, it has to be, for lack of better words, approved or considered truthful by the county board. And the representative for the county board conveniently didn't show up tonight. And not that it matters, but he chose another meeting. And I'm curious, did that other meeting that he chose have to do with saving lives? Just a question, sidebar. There's never going to be a situation where the board is going to approve of a letter that saves criminals' lives. And I'm sorry to be so blunt, but it's just like it's fighting a losing battle in my eyes. So is there another process that we can take? Are they the only ones that we can go through to be considered credible or to even get some attention on the situation?
How much notice did Matt give us? And or had he given us enough notice, would it have been possible for us to scrap this meeting and just call a special meeting at another time that might have been more convenient for him so that we could move forward on this? Because he seems to be one of the things that is stopping it from going through. Couldn't he have said, did he just let us know tonight? Oh, sorry, I'm not going to make it, knowing that we expected him and that we were going to make a decision on this?
He let us know earlier in the week.
Okay, early enough that we might have had another meeting that he could attend,
So,
presumably.
yeah, in order to have another meeting, we would have to have had this meeting to vote on another meeting. But yeah, no.
We still would have had to have this meeting.
Point taken about the.
I understand. Okay.
Stuff, yeah.
So Matt made a completely processed response for this. We, in fact, could turn the letter into a public statement that the chair of the Human Rights Commission on behalf of the Human Rights Commissioners forwards to DOJ and says, you should know that as Human Rights Commissioners, we think that there should be
Yes, exactly.
there needs to be an investigation of it.
Yeah.
Maybe we take out the pattern and practice and some of the terminology. But we could say to Matt, we agree with what you said. We chose to go in a different direction. We didn't do something that arguably falls under the section I here. So it's changing. It's changing it. I guess I feel a little uncomfortable about directly sending the letter in its current form to DOJ, having been given this ultimatum, because I think there will be consequences in the future. But we can get the gist to them in a related but different way, I guess.
My question to that, Stephanie, is, but we still don't have the authority under the county, under the county board, under the attorney. We can't even say we are commissioners of the Human Rights Commission. We can say we're residents.
Well,
No, as that clarified, we could, in theory, send a letter to DOJ or release a letter publicly. That is that letter, maybe if it's publicly, it's a different audience, but and then mention that we are members of the Human Rights Commission, but in
No,
in Matt and the county board attorney's view, that would not be an official letter from the, it would not be an official letter from the commission. It would be letters from individual citizens who happen to be on the commission.
okay,
I'm told that we're considering options based on retaliation. If we can't stand for what we signed up for, the Human Rights Commission, because we're concerned that we're going to be retaliated, and we're the wrong commission. Because
Amen.
we speak for those who are unable to speak for themselves. That's why we signed up. That's why I signed up. I'm not operating in fear or of retaliation. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to send this letter to DOJ. We're the Human Rights Commission.
but my question to that is, we were brought in to follow the rules of the county and the ordinance and to follow their rule. I mean, there's a dichotomy here that we also have to stand by, because yeah, I'm totally for it. I don't care who retaliates. I'm here for my people. But if we also agreed that we were going to follow the ordinance, we also have a duty to that respect.
Okay, you're following the ordinance. We voted on that at the last
Nothing
meeting.
has been said.
Can I make a comment? I agree with both of you, and I'm glad you said what you said. I'm glad you said what you said, because I agree with both of you. I agree that we shouldn't be afraid to stand up for what we believe and what we think needs to be done. No question about that. I also agree that if we can do this without undue delay and still do so within the parameters of the rules to which we, let's face it, are either subject and or have signed up to follow, we should try to do it as much as we can. But if we see substantial resistance, either overtly or covertly, to what we feel needs to be done based on our values and why we think we are here and doing what we are doing and should do, then we should go forward and just say, you know what, we tried it. This is what we did. This is what we did. At a minimum, so we can have not only moral cover, but legal cover. Should it come to that? Hopefully it won't, but that's the way I typically like to proceed. I try to do everything possible within the parameters of what is expected. And if what is expected
And that's why
is contrary to what we need to do, then we need to go.
That's why we delayed and had the special meeting delayed last week until today.
Yeah.
To have Matt here. He chose to attend a separate commission, just like Mr. Parker stated. We're talking about human lives, and he chose another commission.
Well,
Understand the need to continue to delay.
can we do this? How about if I have this? I'm totally with you on this. Can we have another meeting just to meet with Matt to discuss this? It could be on Zoom.
But before we get into that, I think people presented a couple of options. One, anyone correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, Mike, go ahead.
After you.
Okay, thanks. So one option would be to send the letter out to DOJ just from, I'd sign as chair, send it out to DOJ. That would be one option. Another option would be send the letter to the Office of Human Rights to request them to send it to DOJ.
I mean, to the county board.
That would be another one. Oh, yeah. So following here. So one would be just the commission itself sending out the letter, and I would sign as chair.
That's one.
Two would be sending the letter to the Office of Human Rights to send to DOJ.
The Office of Human Rights within
Arlington.
Arlington.
You would send it to them to send.
Oh, okay, got it.
As Roland and Helen were saying, that would share. Sometimes they would send out letters. Sometimes they would send out letters through the office.
Right.
So there's those two options.
Right.
The third option would be to send, instead of sending a letter to DOJ, or not even instead, but sending a letter to the county board to request that the county board request the investigation from DOJ. And a fourth one would be, as Stefan said, releasing like the letter as like a public statement. And I think those are the 4 options that have been presented. If I missed any that. And then I just wanted to Mike had his hand raised.
I just had a couple comments, and one, thanks so much for allowing me an opportunity to speak with you tonight. I think it's important for us to kind of ground ourselves in the objective. I want to share a story with you that I had with someone that's currently incarcerated this week. I had a call with a gentleman that has a pending disability issue going on. As you may be aware, our detention center a few years ago was placed under a consent decree for violating ADA. There were multiple instances and a lot of information that went into that. A lot of that is public. I'm not going to spend my time speaking of that. The gentleman actually was made aware of my contact information because of some of the recent that's gone out. And he told me that he's being over medicated to the point that he's not coherent. He said that he's supposed to take high blood pressure medicine every day. That's not happening. They're taking the blood pressure, and according to the allegations that he's stating, sometimes the levels are so high that it's near a stroke. And so he reached out to me because he literally said, I feel like I'm gonna die in here in a matter of days if something doesn't happen. He's having excessive heart pain. And then if you'll recall, some of the gentlemen that had passed away, it has been related to high blood pressure, like extremely high blood pressure. I wanted to call that to your attention. I also think it's important, like I said, to ground yourself in the objective. Mr. DeFerranti cited a statute and section in both the local code and the state code. As commissioners, with our own critical thinking skills, I think it's important for you to read the code yourself, do your own interpretation, right? It's not okay for me to say, hey, this wall is yellow, and in good faith, we say, you know what? I believe you. We did our own investigation and research of the statute at the state and local level. And we didn't find that you don't have the authority to call for an investigation. I want to lift up what Commissioner Younger said about having to wonder why there's so much resistance, right? At the end of the day, we're asking for an investigation. Maybe the highest law enforcement in America comes in and says, hey, we have visibility into jails and detention centers across the nation. Here are some best practices that you can actually bring to Arlington, right? Maybe with an investigation, they come in and say, you know what? All is well in Arlington, and you're a case study for what the rest of the nation should be, right? But that's really, they have that expertise and that broad level of visibility that I think we need. I'm reminded of Nelson Mandela and Dr. King and a lot of the other civil rights leaders. And if a law enforcement agency knocked on my door tomorrow and said I was under investigation for a crime that I know that I did not commit, I would hope that the Justice Department would exonerate me. So in this instance, if the county believes firmly in what's going on in the jail, then they too should say, hey, you know what? Come in and conduct your own investigation. We're confident in what's going on. And we know that you at the highest level of law enforcement in our nation, you're going to exonerate us. To close, I want you to think about some people in the past that, while we don't think this is a violation of the rules, but in the past, there have been times where people said, do not sit in the front of the bus. And they did, and history was changed. There were times where people said, you're not allowed to buy a house in this neighborhood. And people did, and it changed history. There were times when they said, your students will never be allowed to come to our school. Those students showed up, and it changed history. And there was times when they said, do not march across this bridge. And people did, and it changed history. So to bring us back to the objective, if the county board chair chose to write a letter to Department of Justice in thinking about the objective, the FBI and the Department of Justice, that might actually be more reason for them to look into the jail. And so as you think about whether or not you should write a letter, I would ask you not to be dissuaded by what the county board chair does, because as a federal law enforcement agency, if a county board chair wrote to me, then I'm going to want to peel that onion a little more, and I'm going to want to understand why. And maybe that is actually the impetus for what causes the investigation. So thank you for allowing me to provide some remarks.
Thank you. And Stephen, your hand's raised. You're on mute, Stephen.
You're on mute.
So maybe adding another option to the list that you provided earlier, Bill, what if we just release the exact letter that was already written and address it to the county board and not to DOJ publicly?
So we would still send it to the county board, but also release it publicly.
Yeah.
Okay,
Why not? I think it's a great idea.
that's another option. Before we continue discussion, I just want to. So Anna, there's no way to screen share the sheriff's responses.
Oh, I think I can.
Okay. So the sheriff had responses to the questions we sent over. Before we discuss further or vote on anything, I wanted to have all the commissioners see the responses that the sheriff provided. If Anna can screen share those, we'll do that. If not, I can read through it.
I'm confused. Why are we doing that before finishing the letter discussion?
Just because I'm not sure if any of the responses that the sheriff provided might influence people's decision on how to proceed with the letter.
Just if we write the letter to the county board, that's an interesting thing. And again, then forward it if we want to. Letter would have to be changed. But
right, it would have to be addressed to the county board. Yeah.
Well, the substance would have to be tweaked a little bit. Like we're not, when it says we request an investigation from your office,
right.
We request that you ask the DOJ to make it, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we need to rewrite it for the fact that we're asking the county boards to DOJ. Oh, there. Can everybody see that? If you can zoom in, if you go to the bottom right magnifying glass.
Should we read it all the way through? I'll happy to read. Okay. Dear Mr. Rice, please fill the responses to questions that were submitted by the Human Rights Commission. 1. Why weren't the findings of the audit shared with the public as Sheriff Arthur had previously agreed to until the HRC requested it? Answer. Sheriff Arthur requested NIC to come in and conduct an assessment, not an audit. Interesting. I do not have information on Sheriff Arthur's intention of releasing this information. However, once elected, I was asked for the report and I released the information. 2. What do you believe are the critical findings of the report? Answer. The report is quite extensive and full of valuable recommendations. Both classification and medical recommendations are critical areas of the report and extremely important. However, there is nothing in the report that indicates critical findings. 3. Why was there any type of debrief between Sheriff Arthur and you, the new sheriff, about the report? Answer. As chief deputy during this assessment, I was involved with NIC coming in and remain committed to working through the recommendation. So it doesn't look.
There's more.
Can we scroll down?
Yeah. Oh, you're fine. Scroll.
4. All right. 4. What new policies and/or procedures, if any, were initiated after the in-custody death of Abanesh Golda Georges on August 27th, 2023, and the in-custody death of David Gerhardt on December 12th, 2023? Should have been a question there, question mark there. What specifically did you hope to accomplish with those changes? No changes were made to policy or procedures at this time. We are still waiting on the police investigations to be completed. We do not want to prematurely change policy or practice prior to having all of the information. We will also have an internal investigation and Department of Corrections investigation completed to ensure our policy and practices were followed. 5. What, if any, of all of the recommendations from the NIC report were implemented? Of the 56 recommendations from NIC, 50 have been completed and 6 are pending. The 50 completed does not mean that the recommendation was not already in place. There were several operational practices we changed due to the pandemic that we needed to transition out of that required additional training and continued reinforcement. As far as the 6 pending recommendations, We are working to address these prior to a reassessment and progress report by NIC. 6, what were the causes of death for Ms. Woldegeorge and Mr. Gerhardt? Has the medical examiner released their findings regarding the deaths? The Arlington Police Department has not completed their investigation or any information on the cause of death. Further information may be obtained from the chief medical examiner. That's strange. 7, what are the quality assurance manager's roles and responsibilities? What are their specific duties? Attached is a quality assurance manager position job announcement. 8, do you have any data in regard to the deaths and or medical care of those who were in custody? I need further clarification to answer this question. I guess it was sort of a broad question. All right. 9, what is the status of the biometric program and how is it being implemented? The policy was signed in early January 2024 and is now fully implemented after a pilot period. All individuals housed in the medical unit who are not suicidal will wear a biometric sensor unless they refuse, and a refusal form is signed. We have a few more questions. Okay. 10, do you object to a Department of Justice investigation as asked by NAACP? The Sheriff's Office will participate in any investigation from the Department of Justice and will cooperate. Sheriff Arthur asked that NIC come in to conduct an assessment as NIC is a component of DOJ. I have asked NIC to come back in for a progress update and further assessment. 11, can you describe what the healthcare regime is in the jail now, particularly on evenings and weekends? There is currently a medical vendor who has a county contract that dictates staffing on evenings and weekends. There is some variation between day and night staffing. However, anywhere from 3 to 5 nursing staff are in each shift. To include evenings and weekends, there is a medical care and medication offered 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Okay, 12. Looks like this is the last question. After the release of the NIC report, did the sheriff meet with the community representatives who participated in the virtual meeting on August 23rd, 2022? If not, why? Sheriff Arthur was a sheriff during the time the report was released, and I am not aware of who she may have met with following the release of the report.
Any reactions to the answers to the question in light of or in relation to our thoughts on sending the options for sending the letter?
I think the letter should be sent directly to DOJ. We gave the courtesy of waiting 2 weeks as requested by Mr. DeFerranti. And he's not here. Neither is Sheriff Kirchhoff.
Anyone else?
Well, we did approve the letter. We specifically voted on it with unanimous approval. So we approved the letter. As I see the question is, when, and in what manner do we send out the letter? Because we've all.
Yeah.
I agreed on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was ready to go at that point. It was just waiting for Matt's okay. And that's what we were waiting for the last 2 weeks. We decided, in fact, I think I specifically said, you know, let's see what Matt has to say about it. He can wait another 2 weeks. It's urgent, but it's something that, you know, it's not going to change in 2 weeks. Remember we had that conversation, so.
And the letter we approved was directly written to DOJ.
Helen, your hand is raised.
I would recommend you send a copy of the letter to the county board as written with a cover note to the county board asking them to send the letter as written and follow the process laid out in our ordinance. And I think you could say in the letter, if the county fails to do it within a specified period of time, we will XYZ, whatever the or else is. But I think paper over the record, follow the process, give them an opportunity to do it, and make a recommendation within the scope of the ordinance.
Would there be a problem if, Helen, if when, according to your recommendation, we did send the letter directly to the county board to simultaneously make it public?
I've never seen it. I mean, I don't know that there would be an issue. I don't know that it's contemplated by the process. I don't know that it's prohibited by the process. That's a judgment call and a discretionary question whether we would do it. I think it's a viable option, to Stephen's point.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that it's not illegal, I think it might be a good way to sort of put some pressure on the board to move this forward. My thought on that. Anybody else?
Yeah, see, I don't think the board is gonna, I don't think whatever we do, no matter what we do, the board is going to approve the letter or the board is going to send the letter forward. I think I kind of agree with the process that Helen has set up. It is to make sure that we procedurally have covered our tracks pretty much with it. And I think what we have here is a county board liaison who said in writing, I want to come and I will come and I will speak to you. But at the same time, we have a board that says, well, we've given you the opportunity the last time and you didn't come this time. And now you're saying I'll come next time. And then maybe come next time, you're going to say I have something very, very important, so I can't make it then. So I think that what Helen has is a good idea, but I think we should put a short time period on it. And I think one should, and maybe a week, maybe if the board hasn't responded in a week, then the chair automatically sends the letter out. We should not have to be considering this at the next meeting again, because we've considered it for, actually, we've been considering this whole thing for ever since 2022, when it was initially presented to us. So it's to sort of make sure to the board we've covered ourselves, but at the same time, we've got to come to some finality.
I have another question for you. You know, Matt knew that he wasn't going to be, more than likely knew that he wasn't going to be able to make it tonight. Could he then not have possibly suggested, possibly said, yeah, you know what, I'm probably not going to be able to make it. I've taken a look at the letter. Here's what I think about it. I think if, you know, I think it's great. You send it out as is, or, you know, I've got a question about A, B, and C, or I have a concern about D, E, and F. Here are my recommended changes. You know, I don't have time to make it, but if everybody's okay with my recommended changes, we send it off. I mean, to the extent that he didn't have any substantive objections to the letter, that should have been made clear. I'm just saying that's another option that it seems to me could have been exercised. I don't know all the rules about doing this and what needs to be done in person and all of that other stuff, but that seems to me to be a fair option that he could have exercised.
And I'll just say I agree with Roland's suggestion of taking Helen's suggestion, but also putting the time limit on that request. And if it doesn't happen within a week, I as chair would send the letter out. To me, that seems to be.
So Matt calls you on the side and comes up with something else like he did this time.
No,
and then we'll have another special meeting and invite Matt to come. And I just disagree with waiting. That's just going to be my position.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seems like we've been waiting for a long time, and you know, sort of keeping it. I didn't understand. I'm, you know, a newer participant to this process, but just even having been in it as long as I have,
Right.
And then hearing what, you know, happened preceding my involvement, it seems like it's time to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally would not have a problem either sending it out now with me signing or going the process that Roland suggested. John, your hand's raised.
Yes, sir. You know, this is obviously a time sensitive issue, and having been someone that's been in the trenches and witnessed just what goes on there, heaven forbid that all of this red tape that is being put up seemingly from the opposing side. It would be a shame for something to happen when we continue to jump through hoops. And here's another thing I'd like to say is DOJ, the problem is there's deaths. People are dying. So why does there need to be anybody to approve of anything that we're doing? It's people are dying. Department of Justice, this is what's going on. And I would think that it's only natural for them to launch an investigation, regardless of what the county board says. Anybody knows that the county board, they're going to oppose an investigation of their own house. So that's just, I don't understand. It's confusing to me.
And I just want to add, we heard Mr. Parker's personal experience at the last meeting. We just heard from President Heminger, who spoke with someone who appears to be in dire need of medical attention from what we're hearing. Not only hearing from Mr. Parker and the other two gentlemen that were here last week, and then we're still saying, let's wait, let's give another week, let's see what Matt says. It's mind-boggling.
So one slight tweak. We could, right now it says the Arlington Human Rights Commission, and it talks about, and it has another provision. We could say, as members of the Arlington Human Rights Commission, we've been made aware. I think we would say, again, in the second to last paragraph, as the Human Rights Commissioners, we request an investigation, may need to change that footnote a tad. And anyone who wishes could sign their name to that thing. So it wouldn't be just you. I would sign my name to that. I feel a little uncomfortable on the process thing of us sending a human rights commission letter, but I would feel very comfortable signing that letter. I don't know how many. I suspect most people here would be. That would be a slightly different strategy.
Right. So we would change the way that the letter is phrased. That kind of what we were saying earlier. That it would be we would be signing as our capacity.
But it would be more than just your name. It would be
anybody who wants to. Yeah. I mean, that I would be open to that as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's a good idea in terms of making it appear as though there are more people that are concerned about this. Presumably, the fact that you're signing the letter on our behalf presupposes that we are also on board. If we're just talking about the optics, I'm still thinking that we need to do this in our official capacities, because it may just sort of peel back the onion, use Mike's terminology, but I think my 2 cents is I think we need to act in our official capacities to be taken seriously. That's just my thought.
We are.
No, but I mean, he was mentioning doing so in our individual capacity.
Well, everyone would be signing whoever wants to sign would sign the document, sign the letter, but it wouldn't, the way it's worded now is that it's coming from the commission as like an entity. This would be
Not.
members of the commission. And
I see.
But not in an official capacity.
Well,
We would have to be in our official capacity.
I mean, I wouldn't be signing as
Commissioner.
No, I would be signing up as commissioner, but not as Stephen Klein, Arlington, Virginia. I would sign Stephen Klein, Human Rights Commissioner, Arlington, Virginia.
What I'm afraid of that is then we have the county board. We have to talk about the county board. They're going to come back with their attorney and say, these people just sent a letter to the Human Rights Commission, but we're not going to support it. So throw that in the garbage. I'm afraid that we're going to destroy a point that we want the DOJ to do something about this,
Okay,
to act on it.
you bring up a good point. Is there a way that we can get some legal guidance quickly?
So Matt,
Make sure that we are acting within the legal parameters.
for that suggestion, Matt said something along those lines that they discussed around among the county board, that, you know, that's something that, you know, that the county attorney didn't view as, you know, not
Legally
within the authority,
problematic.
because we're, I mean, we say legally problematic, it's like there's like enforcement, like mechanism that's kind of,
Do you have that in writing?
what, that there's not a enforcement mechanism if we send out a letter.
Basically, anything that makes us more comfortable in knowing that we're not going to get sued if we send this.
I mean, there's no,
But the analogy is Matt can sign things as member of the Arlington Human Rights Board. He
Right.
can sign things as chair of the Human Rights of the county board. But that's different than they're acting as chair of the county board.
Yeah.
And I mean.
I see.
Yeah.
So we would just.
There's no way we would get sued.
Yeah, there's no way we're gonna-
Okay,
there's
so
no-
we would, so to Stefan's point, let me make sure I'm gonna repeat what I understand about it, is that we would be in our official capacities, but we would be signing it individually as opposed to signing collectively as a part, as the Human Rights Commission. I guess, to me, I'm seeing apples and oranges and not, I mean, or like, you know, like to make it more, I'm seeing Macintosh apples and envy apples as opposed to apples and oranges. I'm not seeing anything different. I don't know. Maybe I'm not seeing the nuances. I'm not picking up on them.
I can actually say I've never signed anything individual. I've always signed it chair, regardless of the nature of the correspondence and the nature pretty much of the request. And I don't know whether you want to treat it any differently than you do any other pretty much correspondence. The more you try to treat it differently, so
You can sign it as.
it kind of takes away
as
from the
commissioner and former chair.
because it kind of gives the impression if you leave someone out with, is this really the commission that's speaking? Is it really? So, and I think Wanda's concern is valid when you don't want to delay this anymore. But I think if you today is Thursday the 8th, and if the commission just says, we want you to send it either with a cover letter, and if you don't get a response to the board by, add 7 days to that, the 15th, then the chair sends
A response to the commission.
I think that's a great idea.
and leave it within the discretion pretty much of the chair to decide, well, based on the response, I'm not going to send it out. Puts tremendous pressure on the chair, but that goes.
How about if we do
chair.
this?
But it gets it out because there's a date certain that it goes out, which is the 8th. Or if the board says, no, we wanted to go out on Monday, or we wanted to go out on Tuesday, then fine. But it usually does take a little time for something to go out. I mean, I never sent a letter. Usually like about 2 or 3 days afterwards when I would be able to get to it. So this is kind of keeping within that, but it's.
Today was a date certain and Matt did not show up. And here we are talking about delaying again.
So here's my thought. I like your idea, Roland. So here's what I think we should do. Taking all these great ideas into account and one thing that rolled into one nice package. I think we should write a letter to the board or write a letter to Matt, whichever is more you consider more appropriate. And just basically tell them, we waited, we made a decision on the letter. We waited 2 weeks for you to show up. You didn't show up. You didn't give us your comments on it. We feel that this letter is of enough urgency that it needs to get out. We'd like to give you 1 week to respond to the letter. And if we do not hear a response from you within that week, we intend to send it out. And that's it, done. We gave them every chance possible. We gave them a 2 week, period to show up. Didn't show up. I mean, there's a limit to how, you know, like we said, there's lives on the line, and we need to look, we need to live up to the human rights council part of this, so.
And the human rights part is President Heminger just stated that he spoke to someone who said that they felt that they were dying. And we're talking about waiting another week.
Yeah.
Well,
What's human about someone who's in fear of their life? Mr. Parker, who spoke that he was in the hospital 3 or 4 days, blood clots in his legs and his lungs. No doctor who would see him over the weekend. People fearing for their lives, and we're talking about retaliation and giving Matt and the county board. I'm just.
what do you guys think? Should we send it out today? Yeah, I mean, I guess the question, I think what Wanda's bringing up, the question that she's raising is, you really think it's gonna be any different in a week? And I hear her saying, I don't think it's going to, we're just wasting time and possibly risking the life of somebody whose life could be saved if we could act quicker.
And I see a member of the public has their hand raised, Chelsea. Chelsea, do you have your hand raised? You're on mute. You're on mute.
I apologize. This is Mr. Carver. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Now, I was an inmate in Arlington County with Mr. Parker. Time is ticking. We don't have the time to be sitting here going back and forth. No disrespect, but let's take it back for a second. There was the last gentleman that passed away in there. He got held for contempt. 2 weeks later, he passed away. I was incarcerated when that gentleman passed away. Then let's take it back to this lady here. She was in there for trespassing. Got taken into custody from an airport. These are people's lives. The human resource here that we need you guys help. We live this. Me and Mr. Parker lived this. Parker was a couple doors down from me. I sat right here and watched this guy in pain, while these people are taking their precious time to get to people. This is insane. We're talking about lives here. Something needs to be done. I understand this can be any one of y'all family members. You don't necessarily have to be a criminal, anything. You can get pulled over, whatever. Anything can happen, and your loved one get incarcerated, and then we sitting here letting this happen. Come on, we got to do something. Something needs to be done. Whatever, if we got to go to the newspaper, whatever we have to do, something needs to be done. These are lives. When I was incarcerated, I was on high blood pressure. I have documents and everything right here. I had to go to Mr. Heminger in order to get help. He was the one that got them people to come down, Chief Johnson and all that. My wife been sending letters and all this stuff. These people don't care. And why you think Mr. Jose isn't here? Because he's buying himself time. And we're sitting here letting him buy time. He could have showed up today. These are 2 meetings he missed. 2. It's clear. He's buying time. That's all I have to say. Please, I mean, I'm begging. Do something.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So just being mindful of time to discuss this for a while. Just open to anyone entertaining any motions to vote. Oh, before I do that, go ahead. Another public comment.
Yeah, I'll just make a comment. This will be my personal comment from my experience. My experience as the chief of detectives here in Arlington, as a deputy chief here in Arlington, as an assistant United States attorney. This matter is clearly serious. It is clearly urgent. If you make a decision to get the letter out, you may save a life. There's a good possibility you could save somebody's life. I mean, it is just that critical. We've got people who've been in detention, who've testified before you. This is a situation that's going on now. The sheriff hadn't changed anything. So we still might have another tomorrow while we're sitting around debating whether or not we should send this over to the county manager, to the county board. I mean, DeFonte has already said he's not in agreement with it. One of the other board members has said she would send a letter to DOJ saying that you weren't authorized. So it's crazy to think that the county board would get on board. So you might as well get the letter out. That's my call.
Well, so
I mean, I understand that, and I'm 100% right. What I'm afraid of is that they'll come back with our well-written letter, 100, you're correct, as a sheriff, as everything you've been, your experience, but they're gonna come back and the county board's not gonna support that. I wanna wait for them to say, here's a letter sent by the HRC and we're gonna act on it. I'm afraid, and what is right, and she's nodding no or not, but I'm afraid that they're gonna throw this letter away and let's send it out today. I have no problem sending it out, but what's gonna happen when the DOJ spits on it?
Well, at this point, they're gonna spit on it whether we send it early or whether we send it 2 weeks from now, or somebody else sends it. I mean, it's so what? I hear what you're saying, but after really hearing the conversation and getting a more rounded sense of what the realities are around it, I'm inclined to send it out this week. Because honestly, I've come to the conclusion that I don't think anything's gonna change in a week. You don't. You know, there was an opportunity to have made any changes to the letter. Matt had that opportunity. He didn't make it, and he didn't show up tonight. So I would think that in lieu of showing up, that is something that might reasonably have been expected, and it didn't happen. Yeah, I say we send it out.
So I think there really are only two possible channels forward. I don't think that sending the letter to the county, I agree. I don't think sending the letter to the county board, either our letter or a letter asking them to do something, that they'll agree to do it. So that's just going to be a waste of time. But I think there's still a question. If we send it out today, and as parenthetically, I would not want it to go to the staff and put them in the middle of this to send it out. So it's either you sending out the letter directly, or my suggestion of slightly changing the letter. And I think a consideration is the county may do what it says it's going to do, which is write to DOJ and say they're not entitled, please disregard. I don't know if they would do that, but they could do that. My suggestion, I don't think that we could say we've complied with you, and we tweaked it a little bit. So the question then is, which would be a little bit more persuasive at DOJ? Our letter with the response from the county saying disregard, or maybe the slight change, hopefully without a response from the county. So, and I don't actually really care which way, but I'm spitting out what the ramifications might be. But I kind of agree that there's not a whole lot of point in waiting, and it might be, the margin's helpful to send now.
I have to leave in 10 minutes, just so you guys know. So if we do need to vote on it and you need to be part of that process. Yeah.
So Stefan's laid out two potential options. But at this point, I'll entertain a motion for any of the options that people have presented.
Should Stephen or Helen have any comments?
I don't see their hand raised.
I've
Helen?
already made my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm finished as well. Thank you.
Then I
I'm
make
finished. Thank you.
Motion.
I make a motion to send the letter that we approved at the last meeting directly to DOJ tomorrow.
And just clarifying, Stephen presenting two ways, either with me just signing as chair, or the other way of having it individually sign, tweak it to say the members as opposed to the board.
Well,
So Wanda, I'll do whatever.
I'll do whatever,
most
yeah, I don't
people
know.
want. But do you understand what my concern is by sending a letter directly at this point? Which is, it'll probably mean there'll be a second letter from the county. So is it better to send the letter in your eyes, or the as written, or a slightly modified that might preclude the county from writing the letter?
I think the county is going to disagree with whatever word is in the letter.
And before I recognize you, I was going to say, it's my understanding. I may not be fully interpreting this right, but it was my understanding from conversations that either form we send that letter that you laid out, whether it's this or that the chair of the county board would send a letter out saying to disregard the letter. So I don't think either.
If it said in that we're not as the commission, but as commissioners.
I don't want to speak for
But
county board
it might
members,
be the
but
same
that
letter.
is the sense that I got is that would happen in either scenario. Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I didn't
But
think
again, I don't know that for sure, but that's the sense I got.
I didn't know, because I thought that he was actually kind of, from reading that he was actually saying, well, I really do want to talk to you about it. That's not, okay.
Like Matt
That's not.
said he wants to talk about it, but the chairman Garvey, or the chair of the county Garvey, the chair of the board Libby Garvey would, if a letter goes out in whatever capacity, would send a letter to DOJ saying to essentially that we can have this, disregard the letter. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we should go ahead and send it as the Human Rights Commission, because I think if I've heard what's being said, it's not going to make a difference with individual capacities or not, because the truth is that the county board apparently is going to dis it based on the substance. So whether we do it procedurally according to what it's not going to be. So I think we should, go in our official capacity. I think it's a stronger statement.
Yeah, you have a motion.
So let's, do you want to
yeah,
repeat the motion?
So you can.
The motion is to send the letter that we unanimously approved at the last meeting in its entirety to the individual state and Department of Justice, and send it out tomorrow.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All those.
I abstain. Sorry, I abstain. I'm not on
Oh,
record
abstain.
voting for it. I'm
Abstain.
abstaining. I wasn't at the prior meeting, so I'm abstaining.
Okay.
Okay, motion passes. And that, do we need the exact number for that? Was that? Yeah. That was.
The only, everybody,
And Helen
all
abstained.
yeas and Helen abstained.
Yeah,
But it doesn't matter what they abstain or not, because they're on.
The motion passes.
yeah, the motion passes. I think we need,
Stephen has a question.
Yes, Stephen.
So I'm voting no on this one, but
Okay.
not going to change the outcome.
Okay, so that's 1 no, 1 abstain. And
Just a
that's-
point of clarification, are Stephen and Helen actually able to vote?
Yeah.
They are able to if you have a quorum.
Yeah.
Really? I thought.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I think.
Yeah, I know.
No, they're able to vote.
We're still, the motion still passes.
Yeah.
We're good.
So, yeah, six in
Yes,
favor.
yes,
Yeah. 6 in favor, 1 no, and 1 abstain.
Okay. Good night.
Okay. All right.
Do we-
Just, there's, if you have to leave, you.
I stayed for 5 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just moving along, just turning it over to Anna. We have an appeal that we need to schedule. Is that correct?
So the option is, the ordinance does give you the option to hold appeal with only 3 members. Do that outside of a normal.
Okay. So
position.
So we have to schedule an appeal. We could schedule it for the March meeting. The only issue with that is that, Matt had requested to speak at the March meeting, but that was in relation to the letter, which we already come to a final decision on. So I leave it open if we schedule the appeal for March, or we still schedule to meet with Matt in March and then have another special meeting just for the appeal. What are people's thoughts about that?
My recommendation, oh, sorry, Bill, I thought you recognized me.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. My recommendation is you keep it on the ordinary cadence and then you just do it first and then you have Matt after. That's what we've done historically.
So I'll entertain a motion for what Helen just said about keeping with the ordinary schedule and having the appeal in March.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Great, I think that's unanimous vote. With that, anything else? Any extensions?
No.
No. Any member reports? That I'll entertain a motion to close the meeting. Oh, go ahead.
We need to try to choose your virtual, or yeah, your all virtual meetings.
Oh, the virtual meetings. Yeah, I think we picked the virtual meetings in the January meeting.
Yeah, we already.
But we didn't finalize it. Waiting upon the answer on whether the January special meeting would be virtual or not, which it wasn't. So I can I'll just send over those dates to you, because I think we all agreed at that January meeting on which ones would be virtual. Anything else?
I'd like to make a motion to close the meeting.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All right.
We did it.
Yeah, how are you?